home of one of the most ancient of civilizations, from where the Nile flows freely to the Mediterranean, let us discover the land of the Pharaohs. Welcome to Egypt. Join us as we journey through its history, learn about its culture, and know more about its people. The story of Egypt spans millennia, starting from the pharaohs down to modern times. As such, we will only be discussing an abridged version of its history. If you want an in-depth discussion on ancient Egypt, please let me know in the comments below. As early as 5000 BC, early signs of farming began to appear in the area of present-day Egypt. This was due to the proximity of human settlements to the fertile banks of the Nile River, which serves as the main artery for agriculture even to this day. As such, many kingdoms and dynasties rose and fell near the river. It also had its religious purpose, as the people viewed the fertile lands surrounding it with sacredness. The very first period was called the Old Kingdom. It was during this period that the pyramids were built. The first one, a step pyramid, was built by Zoser in 2665 BC. The Old Kingdom period eventually ended in 2181 BC, when it fractured into smaller parts and marred by civil wars. Thanks to the efforts of Mentuhotep II, Egypt was reunited again in what is now known as the Middle Kingdom period. It was a time of art and literature. It lasted until 1650 BC. In 1650 BC, the Hyksos people of Palestine managed to take control of the entirety of Egypt until they were driven out by the Egyptians by 1550 BC. This heralded in a new period called the New Kingdom period. It was here that Egypt's power was at its height until its collapse in 1070 BC. In 525 BC, the Persians were able to conquer Egypt, bringing with them a new culture largely different from that of the local population. Darius I, ruler of the Achaemenid dynasty of Persia, attempted to restore Egyptian temples, which was a play to ensure that Egypt would last as a state under Persia. This did not happen, however, as the Macedonians invaded in 332 BC. Alexander the Great, in his war against the Persians, seized Egypt due to its importance as the breadbasket of the Mediterranean. They established a city called Alexandria in honor of Alexander. After the fracture of Alexander's empire, Egypt came under control of the Ptolemaic dynasty. The dynasty was, in all forms, Greek, but it took Egyptian traditions seriously and incorporated it to its rule. Thus, the Ptolemaic rulers were called pharaohs, as a callback to the olden times of Egypt. The Ptolemies would rule from 305 BC until the Roman invasion of 32 BC. The Romans saw Egypt as an important crossroad in Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. It was strategic in that, as has already been mentioned, it was the breadbasket of empires. The fertility of the Nile provided near-endless supplies of crops essential to Roman logistics. After the Roman collapse of the 4th century, Egypt became part of what is now known as the Byzantine Empire. Christianity spread forth, most especially in Alexandria, whose patriarch became the most influential figure during that time. In the 7th century, a new superpower was rising in the East, a religion that would challenge Christian rule all over Asia Minor and northern Africa, Islam. The Islamic invaders were mostly Arabs, and by 642, they had the entirety of the old Roman territories under their rule. It became part of the burgeoning, yet quickly expanding, Islamic Empire. In 1171, a new capital was built called Cairo. The Islamic Empire would rule Egypt under different dynasties until they were conquered by the Ottomans in 1517. Under Ottoman rule, Egypt had some sort of autonomy, so long as they paid taxes to the Ottomans. The nation declined economically, and it was also ruined by plague in 1719, rendering it almost no longer capable of recovering. In 1798, the French, under Napoleon Bonaparte, invaded Egypt, but a joint British and Ottoman force were able to drive away the invasion. In 1805, a revolt broke out under Muhammad Ali against Ottoman rule. He eventually became the Viceroy of Egypt. He desperately tried to modernize Egypt. However, he was never able to accomplish this goal as he died in 1849. After Ali's death, the Suez Canal was built in 1859. This would bring about drastic changes not only to the economy of Egypt, but to the economy of the world, too. In 1882, the British were able to gain control of Egypt. After a revolt, worried about their investments in the country, the British sent troops to pacify the uprising. They kept the present ruler, Khedive Ismail, as a puppet. Naturally, the Egyptians resented becoming a British colony, and in 1919, anti-British riots swept Egypt. In 1922, Britain recognized Egypt as an independent state, yet the British still controlled the Egyptian communication system, its legal system, and its foreign policy. British rule ended in 1952 after a coup that toppled the British-backed monarchy. They were called the Free Officers and called for the abdication of Farouk I, the then ruler of Egypt. And so began the story of an independent Egypt. According to the World Bank, Egypt has a GDP amounting to $477 billion. It is Africa's second largest economy. The service sector makes up 54% of the entire GDP of the country, with manufacturing at 34% and agriculture at 12%. Despite its proximity to the Nile, global warming and other climate trends have actually reduced the amount of arable agricultural land near the river. The agricultural industry, as a result, is at present declining due to desertification. Despite its gradual decline, products are still available, including sugarcane, sugar beets, wheat, maize, tomatoes, potatoes, rice, milk, onions, and oranges. Some energy resources are found offshore in the Gulf of Suez, which includes crude oil. In the Nile Delta, natural gas can be found. However, the country still largely imports oil from other countries such as Saudi Arabia. The flag of Egypt consists of 3 horizontal lines, with the coat of arms in the center. The 3 lines have different colors. The red represents the blood of the martyrs, the white represents peace, and the black represents the dark period of occupation. The coat of arms, also called the Republican eagle, bears the red, white, and black colors of the flag on its chest. The eagle is symbolic of the Islamic ruler, Saladin, who was the first Sultan of Egypt. The eagle also carries a scroll that reads, Gumhuriyat Misr al-Arabiya, or the Arab Republic of Egypt. The capital of Egypt is Cairo, and the country has a land area of about 1 million square kilometers, or 386,000 square miles. The most prominent feature of the country is the Nile River, which flows from the Great Lakes region of Africa down to the Mediterranean Sea. There are 4 different major regions of the country, including the Nile region, the Western Desert, the Eastern Desert, and the Sinai Peninsula. The country has mountainous areas, mostly in the southwest of the Western Desert. The highest point can be found in the Sinai district, Mount Catherine, which stands at about 2,600 meters or 8,500 feet above sea level. The lowest point can be found in the Qattara Depression, which is 133 meters or 436 feet below sea level. Egypt's climate is mostly dry and hot, dominated by the desert except for the northern areas close to the Mediterranean, which receives rainfall during winter. The average daily temperature in the country is 22 degrees Celsius or 76 degrees Fahrenheit. The total population of Egypt is around 111 million people. The ethnic group that dominates the country are Egyptians. The current dominant language of Egypt is Egyptian Arabic, which is a dialect of the wider Arabic language family. It is most often called Masri. More than 90% of Egyptians are Muslim, and thus their lifestyles revolve around Islamic laws. However, there still exist Christian sects in the country. Egypt is most famous for its ancient Egyptian architecture and art, including the pyramids, temples, tombs, and so on. Such examples are the Great Pyramids of Giza. An explainer on Egypt would not be complete without talking about its cuisine. Here are some famous dishes you can try when you visit the country. The most basic of all, aish baladi, is nothing but a humble flatbread that one can eat with other dishes. It is Egypt's own version of the beloved pita bread. Who isn't familiar with baba ganoush? One of the more popular dips in Egyptian cuisine, it consists of mashed cooked eggplant blended with tahini, garlic, olive oil, lemon juice, herbs, and spices. Koshari, one of Egypt's national dishes, is a popular street food commonly found in Cairo. It consists of lentils, white rice, chickpeas, and macaroni topped with a spiced tomato sauce and crispy fried onions. And lastly, we have ega, Egypt's answer to the frittata. An omelet-like dish, it can be filled with veggies of any sort. Like all other countries, Egypt is also home to many prominent figures that have changed the history of the entire world. Well, not all of them, but some of them at least. Here are a few famous figures from Egypt. First off, we have the Ptolemaic pharaoh, Cleopatra, known for her relationship with Mark Antony and her ability to speak multiple languages. Second, we have renowned actor Rami Malek, who is known for portraying Elliot Anderson in the series Mr. Robot. Next up, we have Muhammad Ali, the so-called father of modern Egypt, who led an uprising to help modernize Egypt. And lastly, we have the ever-famous footballer Mohamed Salah, considered one of the greatest players of contemporary football. If you enjoyed this video on Egypt, you'll love this next one.